Hello, everybody. Hello. We are here again. This is Amy. I am VP of Conservation at Oakland Zoo. Here we are. What a joy it is to share this world and this planet with wildlife, with animals. It's amazing, and it is a challenge. We live on this beautiful planet, and for us here in California, we live in one of the most beautiful states. And Big Sur Coast, I know you've been there, is one of our most beautiful jewels. It is also the home of the incredible giant endangered bird, the California condor, which makes it just the most incredible place on the planet. Populations of the California condor were down to 22 individuals in 1982, and this incredible organization, Ventana Wildlife Society, was at the center of this historic and radical recovery effort. They're amazing. If you stick with us today, you're going to find out how condors are doing currently, what is being done to save them, and how you can help too. We'll be with Kelly Sorensen. He's the executive director of Ventana Wildlife Society. You are watching Cocktails and Conservation.
You're watching Cocktails and Conservation, where we rendezvous with inspiring wildlife conservation leaders from around the planet, hear their stories, learn how they protect the animals we love, and how each of us can help them. With our featured custom cocktail, together we toast to taking action for wildlife.
All right. Welcome to Cocktails and Conservation, where we meet wildlife heroes from around the globe. We hang out with them. We listen to their stories. We join their solutions, and we have a refreshing beverage. So we do good while having a good time. That's pretty awesome. We also connect directly with people like you who are part of our community who want to do good. I'm your host. I'm Amy Gottliff. I'm the VP of Conservation at Oakland Zoo. Conservation's pretty centered to our mission, and we do like to gather to think about these things and talk about these things, and Cocktails and Conservation is our way these days of doing that safely, of getting together, raising awareness, meeting amazing people, supporting these global partners we have around the world, and also supporting local restaurants and bars who need awareness and support themselves, and we're happy to do that, and of course have fun. So today we are going to pretend we like to have little fantasies. And today's fantasy is that we are at Big Sur and we are at some beautiful deck in some cool restaurant where we got served food. Let's pretend that. And we are just looking out at the cliffs and the ocean, and we are watching condors just soar around. Can we do that? Let's do that. We're watching condors soar through the sky. It's beautiful. And if you're down for that with us today, just type soar in the comments. All right. If you want to get going on that cocktail, the Soaring Condor cocktail made by Sidebar in Oakland, California by Lake Merritt, go ahead and check out the recipe in the chat. It's going to be there for you, and you can get going on that. All right, so here's a question for people who are joining us. All right, a lot of people soaring. Oh, we got someone on a scooter. You can score too. You can soar too, Eddie. All right, so here's a question for you. Have you ever seen a condor? Were you ever able to get to Pinnacles or Big Sur or somewhere else? And did you get the pleasure of watching this giant bird fly over you? Now, I know some of you saw our condors at Oakland Zoo, and that's amazing. But have you ever seen one just flying completely free through the sky? If so, where were you? And what was that like? I've seen it once or twice, and it pretty much blew my mind. Oh my gosh. All right, so while you're all getting here, yes, some of you have, yay! I want to welcome you. Welcome anyone who just happens to be on Facebook wondering what's going on there. I want to welcome Oakland Zoo donors and friends of the wild. It's because of you we can even do this. Anyone in the conservation community and AZA community, hey, any bird people, any Big Sur people, of course, Ventana Wildlife, and all of your community if you're here listening, and also fans of Sidebar in Oakland. I know there's a few of you there too. I'm a huge fan. All right, we're going to be talking today with Kelly Sorensen. He is the executive director of Ventana Wildlife Society and someone Oakland Zoo's been working with for a very long time, an amazing partner of ours. He has been the executive director for a long time, since 2003. He's really done so much to save these species. He does research, he does the community work, he does the hard nitty-gritty work that's needed to be done to change minds and hearts, to act on behalf of condors. He even does the fundraising, and he's just a great spokesperson for the condor and just an amazing conservationist. I want to welcome, when I find him, here he is, Kelly Sorensen.
Hello, how you doing, Amy?
Yay, you're here, and I'm here.
It's working.
Yeah.
Great to be here.
Great. I haven't figured that out yet. Where are you right now? Do you live in Big Sur or Salinas or?
Well, excuse me. I live on the Monterey Peninsula, and right now I'm at my home. I'm not in Big Sur today, though. I wish I was.
Mm-hmm. All right. And are things in the Big Sur world different during COVID, or is there less tourists, or more people are trying to get away? What's it like there?
At first, it was a little bit like a ghost town, and it's definitely picked up. There's a lot more visitors to the area, but it's definitely noticeably less than what it used to be. Interestingly enough, I think the condors could really care less. They're just going about their business, doing what they have been doing for years, and it's really neat to see that they haven't skipped a beat whatsoever. Our field crews have been working harder because we have to be safer, and can't travel in pairs anymore, so we have to be extra safe in other ways when we're out there in the backcountry by ourselves.
Yeah, I hear that. Well, thank you for doing that extra work we're all doing. So someone made the same comment I made a while ago, and that is your last name. And I can't believe no one's ever said this to you before, but the fact that it's all about condors soaring is the ultimate dream, and your last name is Sorensen.
Well, not very many people have made that connection, but I definitely see it. It makes sense. I'm Swedish and Norwegian, Northern European descent, so Sorensen makes a lot of sense.
All right, well, it's pretty awesome. Okay, Kelly, let's start with, how did you get to be the executive director of Ventana Wildlife Society?
Wow, I think a lot of it was just being at the right place at the right time. When I was an undergraduate in West Virginia University, I fell in love with birds of prey and did a lot of volunteering for a rehab center. And then one day, a friend of mine noticed a job posting for bald eagles out here in California. And I thought, boy, I would love that, but I don't have any experience. And so then right around that same time, I put together a volunteer program. And we had 18 volunteers in the state of West Virginia. I was an undergrad, about 22 years old or something like that, getting ready to graduate. And we went out there and found every bald eagle in the state of West Virginia, at least we thought. And we put together this wonderful report, and it was just a great experience. That helped me land the job in California, working for Ventana Wildlife Society, which at that time was reintroducing bald eagles to the Central Coast. And then it just all came together. We were invited by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to consider a California condor reintroduction program in the same region. And I just finished my degree, and voila, I was in the perfect place at the perfect time. And it's just a dream come true. This is my dream job. It always has been, and that's why I've never let it go.
That's amazing. So you truly have been with this species through everything it's been through.
Yes, yes. Well, from the perspective of conservation in Central California, our U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service partner in Southern California began releases a few years before us.
Okay.
But we've been involved for over 20 years, and me personally as well.
Okay, that's amazing. All right, so let's just talk about condors. Like, before we get into what their issues are and the solutions, I just want to talk about them because they are just the wildest creatures, and I want us all to hear a little bit about them. And I'm just going to show some visuals here. Like, just first of all, what do you love about them?
You know, the thing I love about condors is they're so social and gregarious. You know, when I first started studying these birds, I was just constantly amazed at how much they remind me of people, actually. You know, they have these long-term pair bonds. They, generally speaking, will mate for life. There is occasional divorce. There are even trios where two females and one male and two males and one female work together to raise a chick. You know, these birds are incredibly complex, very social, highly intelligent species that just constantly blows me away. And it's always funny when someone likes to point out their beauty or lack thereof, and I'm always you know, a little bit offended, because you really need to get to know these birds, their personalities, their intelligence, how social they are. It's just really neat.
So these look like two rock stars backstage hugging to me. And then here's more of the pairing. And it just looks like they're on a little date here. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. They're you know, they're being affectionate with one another. You know, we see this with adult pairs when they're mating. We also see it between the parents and the chicks. We were watching just this year in a streaming live cam, which I guess we'll see a little bit later on in this broadcast. You know, this parent and the chick hanging out together, nuzzling, kind of like what you just saw there, and it's just very endearing.
And okay, so here's a bunch together. Is this kind of how they roll in life?
Yeah, absolutely. When they nest, they tend to become territorial, so you'll only see the 2 or 3 members of the pair or trio at the nesting territory, and then the chick inside. And then any other birds they would chase off, because they do become territorial during nesting. But all other times of the year, all other phases in their life, they are very regularly seen together with other birds, like there, as you saw, roosting or perching.
Okay. And speaking of phases of their life, they're so pink when they're older. So they start out dark. Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. So, you know, their first year of life, they're all dark black, pretty much. Very easy to conceal themselves, I think, is maybe what's going on there, evolutionarily speaking. Excuse me. As they get older, though, they need to be able to signify that they're an adult. This is another really interesting thing about condors, that they can actually change the color that you see, and it'll range from pink to red, magenta to yellow. It can vary widely among those 4 colors predominantly, and it's really tied to their behavior, their feelings at the time. When you see a very well-established older condor that's trying to assert his or her dominance, they will puff themselves up and they'll make their colors darker and more vibrant. So it's just it's a very fascinating thing to me. But yeah, you can see when they get to be about 6 or 7 years of age, that's when they reach that absolute beauty mark.
Okay, I love it. There was a question I thought was interesting from Greta. And she says, do they only lay one egg and raise one chick at a time?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and that is true. They only lay one egg at a time, and it would take about 2 months to incubate that egg, and the chick hatches and is in the nest for about 6 months. Then the chick fledges or leaves the nest for the first time and is still cared for by the parents for a number of months after that. So when you add that all up, it's over a year's worth of effort to raise one chick. If they lose the egg early on, they can replacement clutch and lay another egg in the same season. But generally speaking, they'll successfully raise one chick every other year.
And does the male sit on the nest as well as the female?
Yeah, there's a lot of personality, a lot of difference among individuals. Both males and females take part in the duties. Some males prefer incubation more so than the females do, and vice versa. So they again, just very unique personalities, and they find the pair that works for them, and they work out the duties, but they share in those duties: the feeding, the incubating, the whole process.
Wow. All right, we have another question I'll pull in from someone in our community, Stephen Goetz. He says, when would be the best time to drive down to Big Sur to photograph them? A lot of it is luck.
A lot of it is luck. You can increase your chances if you go during the spring, summer, and fall months as opposed to winter, because in the wintertime, the rainy season really dampens their movements, and it'll be a little harder to find them in the wintertime. But just drive down Highway 1 in that core part of the Big Sur Range and pull out to various pull-outs on the side of the highway, and you'll see them both above you, above the ridgeline, flying overhead, as well as down at the beaches, feeding on marine mammals that have died.
Yeah. All right. Well, that brings me to this image. What is happening here?
This is a gray whale that unfortunately died, obviously, but it was the very first whale carcass that condors were documented feeding on in approximately 400 years, I think is what it was. There was a sighting in Spanish Bay, by Spanish explorers in the Monterey Bay in the early 1600s. But that was the last documented sighting of a whale feeding by condors in Monterey Bay. So 400 years later, the reestablished population is starting to do really well, and they found this carcass, and the whole flock fed on it for about 3 months.
Amazing. All right. So it seems like this behavior of being the scavengers is kind of some of the problem we're going to talk about. I know this isn't the biggest problem, but only because this is such a good problem that people can take action on, I am going to ask you the question about microtrash. This is little old bubbles and bits found on the ground and put in a nest. What does happen when this happens, when people leave little teeny things on the ground?
Yeah, we call it microtrash because they're small items, and they're especially problematic for wildlife because it can be ingested. These are fragments that are not that large, and a lot of different animals can pick them up and ingest them. So you think, well, why are they doing that? Well, in birds, particularly nesting birds, when the chick is at the stage where it needs calcium the most, and I don't know how they know that, but somehow they innately know that their chick is growing rapidly and they need to bring back calcium. So they bring back bone fragments or pieces of shell on the coastline, which is common. But sometimes they get confused and they'll pick up a piece of PVC plastic pipe or piece of glass, or more commonly bottle caps and things like that. So they ingest it, they bring it back to the nest, they regurgitate their food to the chick to feed it, mouth to mouth, so it goes directly from one stomach to the other, essentially. And if the chick isn't digesting it well, it'll cast it back up. And we are actually documenting that in the live cam just this year. Thankfully, I just want to mention that it's only killed one condor chick in Big Sur. We've been watching it very closely, and we've been doing cleanups, and the community is very good about helping with trash cleanup. And like I said, we've only had the one chick death in all the years we've been doing this here in Big Sur, so hopefully it's not going to be a big problem.
I appreciate that. It's good to know, but even so, whoever is listening right now, wear a glove, keep a little baggie in your pocket when you go hiking. Don't drop anything yourself, especially not the little corners of wrappers, but just pick stuff up if you see it. It helps all animals just to have it up off the grounds. Now, I didn't ask you this question earlier, and I want to get into condor's current issue, but could you give us a 1-minute history of condor conservation? Why did you have to pull in those 22?
Yeah, the 1-minute version, don't time me, I'll do my best though, is essentially they couldn't keep up with the rate of mortality. The death rate was just too high. There's no way a population of animals could keep up with the rate of death that they were experiencing in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, leading up to their capture and taken into captivity. In the 1980s, the annual mortality rate was, get this, 25%. That is just so exceedingly high that there's just no way any animal, not even humans, could keep up with that rate of death. So that's really the nutshell of it, and that's what the whole program has been about, is for figuring out what that #1 cause of death is and figuring out how to resolve it.
All right, and I knew this question would come up. Even I didn't plant Peter there in the audience, but he asked, what is an update on current population?
Well, I'm excited to tell you that the population in just the last 5 years, the wild population that is, increased by 26%. It would have been even higher than that, but of the 17 deaths that occurred last year, half were caused by lead poisoning. And in fact, if you look at all of the lead, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead. I let the cat out of the bag. Lead poisoning is our #1 problem. We'll get into that a little bit more here in a bit. But that cause of death represents half of all the known causes of death since 1992. So it's a huge, huge problem.
Got it. So let's talk about that. This is their huge challenge. And this image kind of explains what happens to a lead bullet inside of an animal as opposed to this other kind of bullet. So what is this? What do you see here, Kelly?
Yeah, we're looking at a traditional lead bullet on the left with a copper jacket. So it's surrounded by copper, but everything in the middle is lead. Mm-hmm. The bullet on the right is almost 100% copper, so no lead. And the reason why lead has traditionally been used is, #1, it's cheap. It's readily available. You can find it on nearly any continent in the world. And it's very malleable. So when it hits a target, it'll mushroom out into these shapes and sometimes fragment, like this bullet here, which is excessive fragmentation. And it causes more damage. And so if you're trying to kill something, I guess that's what you want. You want it to be quick and effective. So that's the reason why it's been used all these years. But we now know that when lead bullets impact an animal, even a small ground squirrel, it leaves behind these lead fragments that you see there on that left image. And then those lead fragments are inside the wound channel of the animal, and then scavengers come along and they feed on that dead animal that was shot. And that's how they'll get the lead. And sometimes they'll even ingest an entire bullet, as you see here. This is a 22 long rifle bullet that was ingested. This is not a condor that was shot. This was an ingestion. So that is in the stomach of the bird. And, at first we thought, well, this is crazy because, hunters, they pick up the animals they shoot. So how can this be such a huge problem? Well, then we found this 22 long range bullet. And then we realized, oh yeah, there's a lot of ground squirrel shooting and other kinds of shooting that occurs in condor range. And those animals aren't typically picked up. They're just left out in the field because they're nuisance animals, getting in the way of the rancher's livelihood. So that's when we kind of had this big aha moment that not only did we find the source, but it also gave us some clues about how to address the problem.
All right. That's a great time to take a drink break. I didn't get to say, like, this is the issue of the day, but if I were to do that right now, I'd say the issue of the day is that our behaviors are what really affects the fate of animals in so many ways. And a really good conservation organization won't just educate and do various research and protecting, but they're going to have to do the super hard work of trying to change a behavior. And I know that's kind of what your focus is these days, and I really appreciate that. And we're going to find out more of that very soon. But right now, we are about to find out about how to make this drink and ask a trivia question. And the trivia question Kelly gave me, do you remember it, Kelly?
Oops.
How long do condors live? So.
Oh, yes. Well, I remember we talked about this, so thanks for the reminder.
Everybody, just take a guess, put it there in the comments, and while you're doing that, I'm going to hide Kelly and myself, and we're going to get to meet Jared from Sidebar. Sidebar is just this great venue in Oakland. It's a wonderful place to sit outside. You're right by Lake Merritt, and they are still open for takeout and for a little bit of outside seating, and they make just delicious cocktails. And Jared's kind of a very well-known cocktail creator. So here we go.
Hi, I'm Jared from Sidebar on beautiful Lake Merritt. It is an honor for me to be making cocktails with you today. My 6-year-old twins are big fans of the Oakland Zoo, and we have a family membership, so this means a lot. They did want to know how the bears were doing. Did love the bears. Today, we're going to make a cocktail that's a riff on one of our most famous cocktails at Sidebar called the Caged Heat. Caged Heat is a drink that we came up with based on ingredients from the Oaktown Spice Shop. And it uses tamarind, cardamom, and dried ghost pepper chilies, and it makes for a very delicious spicy whiskey sour. But in honor of the California Condor, we're going to make it a little bit different. We're going to use some egg whites today to it, and we're going to call it the Soaring Condor in honor of the bird that flies higher than any other, the California Condor. So let's get started. Let's make that drink. It's a whiskey sour, so the first thing we need is some whiskey. We're going to start with 2 ounces of St. George Spirits Breaking and Entering. This is a whiskey that they've been making versions of for quite some time, and every batch is a little bit different, and I have yet to find one that wasn't delicious. So Breaking and Entering from Alameda's own St. George Spirits. Then we're going to do 1 ounce of the syrup that goes into Caged Heat. You can now buy the syrup and make Caged Heats at home, either in this drink or any other drink, but we're going to use 1 ounce of this syrup. This is a tamarind, cardamom, ghost pepper syrup. We're going to do 1 ounce of that. Follow that with some lemon juice, the same amount as we had syrup, so we're going to do 1 ounce of lemon juice. And then we're going to use the white of 1 egg. Now, when you do egg white cocktails, it's a little bit different than how you do a normal cocktail. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a technique that's called the reverse shake. For a long time, people, when they made egg cocktails, they would shake it first without any ice, and then open the tins, add ice, and shake it a second time. We're going to do the opposite version of that. This is called a reverse shake. First thing we're going to do is we're going to add some ice cubes. And then we're going to close our tins. And we're going to shake this one for, I don't know, 15 seconds. Egg white cocktails should be shaken longer than most cocktails. You really want to get all that agitation. Think of yourself as being the whisk of the eggs. And so that's what we're going to do first. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take a strainer and we're going to strain the contents back into the tin, but holding back the ice. You can see it's a little bit milky already. It's starting to turn opaque, which is what you want. I'm going to take the ice in here and I'm just going to toss the ice. And then I'm going to close my tin up again, this time pouring this way. And we're going to shake it again for about another 20 seconds. And what we should have when we're done is a nice foamy cocktail. Egg whites are so delicious. Any cocktail that calls for citrus, lemons or limes is gonna be even better with egg whites. There's just something about that creamy mouthfeel that is just so delicious. We're gonna strain this into a coupe. See if we can get some surface tension. Excellent. And then we're going to garnish it with a dehydrated lemon wheel. Now you can make this drink on the rocks at home if you want to. Well, put it back over there. And there you have it. Soaring Heat. In honor of the California condor.
All right. I did my best. I
Me
don't have
too.
all the cool stuff that Jared has. And I heard, correct me if I'm wrong out there, Oakland Zoo, I heard that his house, he has that in his house, that whole bar scene. I don't quite have that, but this is delicious. So I am going to give a toast to you, Kelly. And we do have a cute little toast. We like to say, everybody, to taking action for wildlife. To Kelly, a big hug. Let's do this together, everybody. Now, chug-a-lug. Chug-a-lug, whatever you got. I like anything with whiskey and all those spices. Carol Wing says, caged heat syrup's delicious, great with lemonade and ginger ale. All right. Okay, before we go any further, the answer to the trivia is?
It's at least 50 years, and to be honest, we're not even sure about the longest because we don't have a record to really prove beyond that, but at least 50 years of age.
Wow, at least 50. That's amazing. That's amazing. Around that age. All right, love it. Okay, so we were just talking about the issues. But now's the time we get into all the great things Ventana Wildlife Society does to solve the problem. And we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of the issue with the bullets and the lead versus the copper. But I want to show, people are still really excited about that cocktail. I really want to show some of the cool research that's being done because you guys are experts on condors and it looks like it doesn't come that easy. So what is happening with people in this giant tree?
Yeah, I always like to joke when this picture is shown that don't show my insurance company this photo. No. But no, just kidding. You know, we need to get into condor nests at times, not all the time, but sometimes, so that we can figure out what's going on. In this case, we have a streaming camera that's installed inside, and Joe Burnett, our senior wildlife biologist, is the gentleman in the cavity of the tree. This is the same redwood cavity that you'll see on the live streaming web camera presently.
Okay. It's pretty amazing. And I wanted to show this. Is this something you see when you get up there?
Joe does. Yeah.
What is happening?
Yeah, Joe and the field crew, they have such a great job. I'm so envious. I got into this because I love wildlife and I wanted to be a wildlife biologist, but now here I am, the director. So I don't get to do this work. I'm so bummed.
Yeah, the higher you up, the more you got to just do this.
That's right. Well, this is great too. And this, what you're seeing here is a chick that's really only a few weeks old. And early on, when the condors first started nesting, which in Big Sur was only in 2006, so it's only been 14 years that they've been nesting in the wild in Central California. And in the beginning, we really needed to have a better understanding of what was going on. Are their eggs viable? Are the chicks doing okay? You know, lots and lots of questions. And after years of study, we determined that they're doing incredibly well, that they really don't need our assistance in terms of the nesting. So we just let them do their thing. And this year alone, we have 8 condor chicks just in Central California. We had 14 raised in wild nests in all of California last year. So the birds are reproductively sound and doing very well.
One question that came earlier is how many, does it always go all well for a little baby chick like that? Even if or like, what's the rate of survival for a little baby?
Yeah, young pairs tend to, have more learning opportunities, I guess is a good way of putting it. And older pairs tend to be more efficient and more productive or more successful. And you'll see that in any bird species pretty much. So if the wild population had half of every attempt, so 50% of all the attempts, if they were successful, that will be enough for the population to sustain itself. And we're seeing rates above that. The birds are actually reproducing better than what the population models predict. So that's very, very good news.
Awesome. What is the story with this lady?
Well, around Big Sur, this pair is pretty much celebrity status. They're our oldest breeding condors. They've been together breeding. Let's see, they're 21 and 22 years old, and they've been a pair since at least 15 years. So before they even started to breed in the wild, they were a pair. So they've been essentially a married couple, if you will, their whole adult lives. And they've just been very, very productive. They were the very first pair. Well, the female of this pair was the first to lay an egg in the Central California population way back in 2006. And so it's a nest that we have access to, and it's a very important pair. And so that's why we wanted to install a live streaming web camera. And we did so with the support of explore.org.
Awesome. We got a lot of really good questions. I might not get to all of them, but I want to promise everybody that even if your questions don't get answered in this experience, we will answer them on the Facebook page. So within the next week, you'll see answers if we didn't get to you. But I love that you guys have these webcams. They must be so helpful. So you don't have to go trucking absolutely everywhere to see everything. Plus, we can kind of spy. So I want to show this. And what I'm going to do is show this webcam. I'm going to go backstage. And it's just going to be you in the webcam. I want you to just narrate for people a little bit about what we are seeing. It feels like we're in like the private bedroom of these condors. All right. So let's see if I can.
While you're
I'm gonna
doing that, Amy, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
I almost messed up. I wanted to also point out that Oakland Zoo was very instrumental in the very first condor cam in Big Sur. And it's only now been an extension of that partnership to include explore.org. So I didn't want to leave you out. You guys were extremely helpful with our very first webcam.
That's great. Thank you. I remember that. That was a big partnership with our marketing department at the time. They absolutely were so inspired by the condors that they really wanted to help you with that. So you guys inspire, and Oakland Zoo helps, and hopefully our audience here will.
All right, so I think the video will start here in just a few seconds. The camera is set up inside that redwood nest that we were looking at just a minute ago. And back in March, the egg was laid. You see in this image here, the egg is already starting to hatch. The chick hatched on April 25th of this year. The chick was named Aniko, which is Nigerian, meaning born during troubled times. The female is Redwood Queen, stud book number 190, and her mate is nicknamed Kingpin, stud book number 167. And as I mentioned before, this pair has been together longer than any other pair in Big Sur, and they're extremely productive. And what we're going to see is this chick grow up right before our eyes. It's already 107 days old as of today. And when it gets to be about 6 months of age, it will take its first flight out of that nest cavity. As of right now, we do not know the gender because we have not handled the chick, and the only way to determine that is to take a blood sample. This is the chick from today, it looks like. It's already growing in the tail feathers. You can see in the center of the image, the chick's head is leaning up against the inside of the redwood cavity. It's, yeah, there we go. The chick is moving now, has its head actually tucked under its wing. And now we went back to some highlight. This is when the chick was hatched, only a day old.
Okay, I'm so excited. I wanted people to be able to see that tiny fuzzy little thing, and that's amazing. You can just watch that. So we can watch that. I think Oakland Zoo is going to put it in the chat that go to their website. You can actually just watch their webcams, which are just so wonderful. All right, great. So you're able to learn all these things, which is fantastic. Keep on learning. And now you're problem solving. And I do want to just pop up this one photo of where Oakland Zoo gets to participate. Because, you know, Kelly, just so you know, it is your passion and, you know, Joe Burnett's passion and anyone we meet at Ventana that gets, you know, a zoo like ours or LA Zoo or people inspired to help. And it's been so great that Oakland Zoo has gotten to participate. Of course, you know, you can tell us what's happening here. It's not for the best reasons that we participate, but the vet team at Oakland Zoo is so dedicated to doing this work. So what is happening in this picture?
Well, the Oakland Zoo is extremely important for helping us keep these birds safe and healthy in the wild. And anytime we have a sick or injured condor, we rely on our zoo partners, Oakland Zoo and Los Angeles Zoo primarily, to get the birds the treatment that they need. And we were super excited when Oakland Zoo built a state-of-the-art vet facility in addition to a separate holding pen just for the condors, which has just been amazing. And thankfully, over time, you know, we'll need less and less of that, but it's still very, very critically important today.
All right. Okay. And then on your grounds in Ventana, there's things. There's the education programs, but there's also this pen. What is happening with this?
Yeah, this is our Big Sur release site. We own a 80-acre parcel that is surrounded by wilderness in the Ventana wilderness. Very remote location, ideal for California condor releases. It's like this big canyon, and it sort of serves as like a little nursery, if you will, for when the condors are first released. They stay pretty close to home. While they're naive, we put food out for them so that they could get better established and become better flyers. And then eventually they start following around the older birds and learning the ropes and where to go find food and do all those things they need to be doing. So what we're looking at is the actual release pen. This is the second one we built. You can tell that the trees have been burnt all around it. This is right after that huge wildfire that we had in 2008 and destroyed our release pen. Thankfully, we had an outpouring of support from donors, and we were able to rebuild in a matter of months. And this is a key piece to our strategy. We need to have a way to successfully release these young, captive-bred, naive condors in a way that they're going to do well in the wild, and you need a way to sort of transition them. In addition, we have to retrap them later on whenever we suspect that they're sick or injured. So we use the same facility to retrap the birds. Interestingly enough, as the condors get older and wiser, they start to avoid our little secret trap here, and we have some pairs that we haven't even captured in years. So it's pretty neat.
I'll bet. And then, so when you say there's older condors who teach, are there some that are just like the tutors, mentors, and they get what their job is?
Well, what I mean is we've been doing this now for a little over 20 years, and we have about 100 condors free flying in Central California. So any new bird that goes out in the wild has essentially 100 older peers or role models, that they could follow and learn from.
That's amazing. And I think this must be some of the best part for you.
Yeah, when we release the birds initially, nobody's around. It's extremely secretive. The food's put out at night so they can't see it. We go through these great pains to keep these birds as wild as possible. After they've been out in the wild for a while, there's no going back. They're not going to become unwild unless you keep them in captivity or something. So this is an opportunity to re-release. So this bird was either retrapped, for a treatment or something. And then there's an opportunity to re-release the bird back in the wild. And why not do that in the presence of people who care so much about these birds? And this young lad here, I remember his name, even though this was well over a decade ago. His name is Hunter, and I'm sure Hunter is now even out of college by now. But it's a really rewarding part of the job, is to connect people to these birds, but in such a way that it's appropriate for keeping the birds wild.
Yeah. I want to mention that another part of your plan is to educate. Like, you've got education staff, camps, tours, all kinds of really cool stuff. I know it's COVID time, so you can't do everything, but donations go to this too. And you've got some phenomenal programs going on. I got really stuck in your website around education, like marveling at what you provide. Thank you for that.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We've been taking.
Go ahead.
I just want to mention we've been taking youth outside since 1992, and we just love that work. A lot of the youth that we work with are from underserved populations that don't have transportation or guides to take them. So we just really value that part of our mission as well.
All right. That's important. Okay, so I'm going to show this really cool drawing that I think somebody in your community created for you, but this seems to really tell the story that I want to get to right now, of the heart of what you're really trying to work on to change the future for condors.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, this graphic was illustrated by Jessica French, professional illustrator. We went to her and asked, can you depict a scene where, ranchers and condors are, cohabitating, and it's a way, give us an image that gives a sense of collaboration, essentially, because that's really what we're doing here. When we realized the source of the lead problem being from spent ammunition, and then more specifically realizing that hunting and ranching contributes to that lead in the food that they eat, it was an opportunity to invite participation and a way to work together to solve this problem. At first, we started with just plain old education, just trying to educate on the subject. In the background, there were state laws being passed, which then made it very polarized. In 2013, a law went into place that requires non-lead ammunition use in condor range, and then the state legislature expanded that to be statewide. So as of July 2019, it's actually required that you use non-lead ammunition when taking any animal in California. But that wasn't really what was working the best for us in terms of, reaching across the aisle and inviting participation to solve the problem. And we went to a Fish and Game Commission, and they were so mad at us, they almost threw us out of the room. But we said, well, what could we do to help convince you? And one guy says, nothing short of handing out free ammunition would ever change my mind. So we went back to the office and we went, is this something we could do? Wildlife conservation organization handing out free ammunition. I don't know. I don't see very many other groups doing that. In fact, we might be the only one. But it became so important. We knew that was the key. That's what we needed to do. It's not a handout. It's an act of good faith. We're trying to show that copper ammunition is a viable product. In fact, it's ballistically very good. And to help people find it. Some non-lead ammunition products are hard to find in the market, so we help people find it. We help direct it to where the condors are foraging in the wild. We don't give ammunition away to people in downtown LA. We focus on those hunters and ranchers that can make the most difference, and we honor them. This is not an us versus them. This is us. We have to work together, and it's starting to work. We've been doing it now for we're going on our 8th year, and we've given out over 2,000 boxes of ammunition. I'm sure that number is considerably higher. And over $250,000 worth of donations, both private and federal funding, that have gone toward that program. So it's very serious. We're very serious about it. We feel it's working, but it's just going to take more time.
Well, that's amazing. That's what I mean of a change of behavior. Like, it wouldn't work to go against the hunters and ranchers. It wouldn't work to fight. It works to collaborate and create an ally, and that takes some really smart maneuvers. So it's amazing what you've done. Thank you for that. I would donate to support some copper bullets, and I never thought I'd want to buy bullets, but I amazing work. So what, I warned you I'd ask you this question, but like, what is a story, what pops out at you that you've done that makes you feel like the methods and procedures and initiatives that Ventana is doing is successful and is working?
One of my favorite things is finding a wild hatch chick that no one knew anything about.
Ooh.
And it happens right around Christmas time. So it's like this Christmas bonus. I don't know why it is. I guess it's just the natural, flow of their, nesting. But by the time they leave the nest, it's usually October-ish, something like that. Sometimes early in September, sometimes November. But if we have no idea that there's a pair out there raising a chick, we wouldn't have any knowledge of that whatsoever until all of a sudden one day it just shows up with its parents. And that's happened a few times now, and it's almost always happened right around Christmas. So now every Christmas I'm like, so am I going to get my surprise baby condor this year? And that to me is a great sign that we're going in the right direction. I'd like to just also comment on, for example, when we have a wildfire and our biologists can't even get anywhere near the release sites and things. A lot of people are worried about the birds, and I just wanted to point out that these birds are doing really well. There's quite a bit of food out there. There's plenty of nest sites. The number one thing we got to do is resolve the death rate, and if we can lower that, which is primarily from lead from spent ammunition, then ingested spent ammunition, then we're going to solve this problem. I just know we are.
I agree. That would be amazing. Feels like you're getting us there.
Together.
So if we were to do something to help, I want to just list a couple actions people can take or where a donation would go to. So let's start with where a donation would go to. What are some things that a donation would help?
Absolutely. So I mentioned earlier, our main goal or our main purpose really is to release captive bred condors to the wild. But then that's really just the beginning. We have to keep track of them. That requires biologists. It requires vehicles. It requires radio transmitters. A radio transmitter alone could cost $250, for example, to help us keep track of the whereabouts of those birds.
I could donate $250 and it would be the radio transmitter.
Yeah. And okay. To throw a larger number out there, not to scare anyone off, but we're looking at just the total budget and how many birds we have flying around out there. You come up with a number of around $5,000 or $6,000 per condor per year. That's not going to be that way forever. Eventually, we're going to be taking these tags off. We're not going to be needed. We're going to just be able to let them go entirely. But for now, while it's still a little bit intensive, we do spend about that amount of money. And again, it's on vehicles and staffing and equipment for the most part. And it's all about protecting the birds in the wild and ensuring that the population grows so that one day we will be out of a job.
Well, I love that. But I love that, $5,000, $6,000 if a person has it, or a group of friends or a family could pitch in, and that money protects this magnificent endangered species for a year. That's a pretty good way to spend your extra money if you've got it. And what are things a person can do? And I'm going to throw some things out there because I love actions, but we covered picking up microtrash. We also covered, it's all about using these copper bullets, which are really nice, apparently great bullets to use. So if you have a hunter friend or family member, I do in some parts of the country, just influence them to make that change, right, Kelly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of great information out there. And if you point people in the right direction, they can learn what's really going on.
Yeah. All right. Well, here's a cool thing I found on your website and you told me about. What is this all about?
Well, we're stuck in COVID, but we still need to raise money. So we're going to have an online auction. It starts August 27th. There's some really cool elements to this. We're going to have a Zoom presentation from Mike Clark with a live condor from the Los Angeles Zoo. We're also going to have some wonderful travel packages, which will have 3-year no blackout dates. So eventually we'll be able to travel again. So those are going to be great to sell. We're also going to have a presentation on the vultures of the world by one of our biologists, Mike Stake, and a bunch of really cool things. And it's all connected to the International Vulture Awareness Day, which is on September 5th when the event comes to a conclusion.
All right, I love it. I will be there. Okay, that sounds great. So join that. And looks like, thank you. Oakland Zoo and Adrian put a link in the chats about how to donate, about how to join that virtual silent auction. Hey, I also saw that you can become just a member of Ventana.
Sure.
Ventana Wildlife Society. You can get really cool t-shirts and other items that help. Well, I'm just gonna, for the end of this, I don't want to really stop. I hate the end of these things. But I just love that these incredible beings soar over these cliffs of Big Sur, free and just so majestic. What is the wingspan?
Oh, 9.5 feet.
9.5 feet. It's really just magical, and I really deeply, from me and my 70 friends here, want to say thank you for making it possible that such a thing happens.
Well, thank you to the Oakland Zoo for the partnership that we've had for many years and the great work we're going to do in the future. And thanks for having me here today.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for joining us. All right. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.